Happy Two-A-Day, everybody. It is Sunday, football day, Two-A-Day, NFL Week 8, and we are here at the Fantasy Football Buzz Podcast to help you decide who you want to start, who you want to sit. We're going to try to go through as many games as we can today, tell you who the relevant players are in each of those games, and go from there. So we'll start out with saying hello to our crew. We got Cyclop and 2020. How you guys doing today?
Man, doing awesome up here in North Carolina. And, normally I don't represent a team on our podcast here, although we are all Dolphin fans. But today I do have my
all right,
my retro Dolphin tie-dye shirt on. So looking forward to the two at time. See, it's time to see how it goes. And, fantasy relevance, we'll see what happens today. But as far as exciting for Dolphin fans, today's the day.
It's mid-retro, right?
What's that?
It's mid-retro because retro would be, let's say, the old Dolphin symbol. This is the one that came out in, the 90s?
Yeah, this shirt's probably about 20-something years old, yeah.
But it's okay.
Well,
you're representing.
Brad.
What about you, Keith? How are you doing?
Same thing. I feel like a Jew before Christmas Day or whatever, someone before Christmas Day with a present that's about to be unwrapped. Very exciting to see.
I don't think Jews unwrap presents. Well, all right. Some do.
Well,
maybe.
I did. Divorced Jews that married chicks.
That explains a lot.
We had Christmas trees. So, but I feel like a present that's about to be unwrapped. Very excited to see what's in the box, the Tua box. And it's just another Sunday. Listen, we have fantasy football. I said it last week. Very grateful for it. In a year that's been anything less than phenomenal or tremendous, which is a favorite word this year.
All right, we've got our number one fan on the phone, Kenneth. How are you doing this morning?
There he is.
Oh, pretty good. I'm off to a good start heading into this week. I'm up pretty big. But I'm in a bit of a quandary in my flex spot. It's my 12-team PPR. I have Giovanni Bernard starting. Should I roll with him, or should I go with? I do have Boston Scott available.
Ooh.
No, I mean if it's between Bernard and Scott, you go with Bernard. But it depends on who else you have also in that available in that flex position. Yes. Mixon is out. Bernard is going to get the carries, but even then, he's still not ranked very high on my list. I actually have him down at 31 on my start list. I wouldn't start him unless you had to at this point.
Who, Bernard?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you there, and I'm going to go with Scott today. Scott goes against Dallas.
Gronk available, but the matchup with Gronk's not that good.
With Bernard or Scott's not that good. What did he say?
He's saying that he has Gronk as well, that he could put him in the flex instead of one of those two.
No, I definitely think you go with a running back there.
With Cyclop, Boston Scott is doing a very admirable job. Obviously, Miles Sanders isn't playing. It's completely his backfield. This game in Dallas, starting a rookie quarterback with a very bad defense, can easily get out of control. By the beginning of the second half, it could just be a run down the clock game. Boston Scott getting 20-25 carries with catches. I love Scott in your flex position. To me, it's for me, that's not a question.
Yep, I'm going to agree with that as well.
All right. Well, Ken, that's what they're saying.
Yep.
I'm starting Gio, but I don't have Boston Scott as another alternative.
All right. Take care, Kenneth. All right. So that gives you a little preview of what we're up against today. There's going to be some very interesting matchups, some questions because of a lot of injuries that are out there. I misspoke when I was talking about the rankings. I actually have Bernard at 12 today, not 23. I have Boston Scott at 14. And again, we're talking about PPR. So I don't think you're going to go wrong with either one. I have them pretty close together. Before we move on with the show, I just wanted to put our number up there, 772-800-BUZZ, if anybody would like to give us a call, or you can comment in the Facebook Live section, and we will get to your comments right away. What we're going to do is we're going to go over the games that are going to happen this week for Week 8 and talk about who the fantasy relevant players are, and we're actually going to start with Cyclop with the Chargers against the Broncos. Talk to us.
All right. Well, here we go. So this game, there's a bunch of weather issues today, and we'll get to them as we go through the games. This game does not have a weather issue, even though it's in Denver, right? You would expect that to be one of them, but it really doesn't. The weather's fine. You got the Chargers, must starts, Herbert. I mean, this guy has been on fire.
Yep.
12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He didn't even play the first game. Over his last 3 games, he's had 3 or more touchdown passes. Start him. He's at this point a must start if you have him on your roster. Keenan Allen, start today to go with that. They're going against the Broncos defense, which is in the middle of the road. And I say sit the running backs. You just don't. I haven't seen enough out of either one of these running backs to get excited about. So I sit the running backs for the Chargers, and I start Herbert and Keenan Allen. As far as the Broncos, really the only start that I have now in this game, Tim Patrick is a game time decision, so keep an eye on that. He's been doing really well when he's in. It's just obviously injuries. Lindsey is expected to play. My start in this game is Melvin Gordon. He has not had a great season, but it's going against the Chargers. It's kind of a grudge game, right? Potentially, right? So,
right.
So that's where I'm going with there. The Chargers have a decent defense with Locke and Fant. I just don't see a lot happening with any of these players. So my main start is Gordon, and pretty much sit everyone else if you can. If you have to play Fant as a tight end, start him. But those are my starts and sits for that game.
Sounds great. Keith, let's jump into Pats versus Bills. What do we have?
Yeah, so starting like Cyclop was saying, weather does definitely take a toll on fantasy values and how players are going to perform. And you're going to have some pretty hefty wind. I think I'm hearing 30, 40 mile per hour winds between the Patriots and that Bills game, which is right. And that's one of the reasons why they drafted Josh Allen, because of that arm strength. So because of that, that's definitely going to affect a game where I do not see a ton of fantasy relevance. Josh Allen was a top 3 quarterback for the first couple of weeks. He's fading dramatically, starting to look like the Josh Allen of 2019, running a lot more, but the passing isn't there. But, against this Patriots team, which is going to be without Stephon Gilmore, arguably the best cornerback in football, I would fire up Josh Allen if he's been your starting quarterback. I don't like the wins. You're going to see some dinking and dunking. He's not my first choice. But if he's your guy, start him. If you have better options, if you have a Herbert or a Burrow, I do that in a heartbeat. But if not, if Josh Allen is your guy, then do it. I'm not crazy about the running backs. I'd be sitting Singletary and Moss. I think they're going to get a lot of action. They've been at a pretty 50-50 split between these two backs, but no one's really doing any damage. So if you have better options, do it. Stephon Diggs, I would fire him up. Again, I don't think it's going to be a heavy passing game, but he's going to be roaming free. Stephon Gilmore will not be there to cover him. He's usually grabbing 6-7 balls a game. So if he's your guy, don't get cute. Don't try to finesse it. Again, unless you have a better option, I would be starting Stephon Diggs. Don't know about John Brown. He's their deep threat guy. I don't like deep balls and winds that are going 30, 40 miles per hour. In New England,
go ahead.
Literally have nobody to start. If anything, you had the defense, and I would consider that. I don't like Stephon Gilmore being out. I think we're looking at a low-scoring game here with that weather. But Cam Newton's look terrible. Julian Edelman is out. Don't even touch a New England running back. That's probably the only running backfield that's in a more precarious fantasy situation than San Francisco or Seattle. So in this respect, I'd be starting Allen. If you have no better options, Stephon Diggs, and probably sitting Singletary and Moss because no one's really lighting it up.
Well, I did have a question. Somebody had asked me that between Burkhead and Harris. Obviously, if you have options, you don't want to start either one. If you do not have options between Burkhead and Harris, what are your thoughts? I think they're going to get about the same.
Well, I'll tell you this. I would go Burkhead. If you're in a half point or full point BPR with Cam Newton, the way he's playing in that kind of wind, there's not going to be a lot of downfield passing. You could probably count on Burkhead for a lot of targets. Neither's going to light it up on the ground. So if I had to choose, between the two,
I'm not with James White back. It eats into Burkhead, but if you have to decide between one of those two guys. It's Burkhead, because you know how Belichick likes to use him, and in weather like this, it's kind of a prime game for him.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, great. So now it's up to me to talk to you all about the Titans-Bengals game. This is actually going to be a really fun game to watch. As far as fantasy relevance, there are some guys that you should take note of. Obviously, we'll start off with Ryan Tannehill. Not a great game, but he's definitely in not a great game last week, but he's in a great bounce back position this week against a Bengals defense that actually ranks 22nd in points per game allowed to opposing quarterbacks. I'm going to go ahead and throw out.
I already put it up.
Oh, you did? Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So if you have Ryan Tannehill, people think, he's an automatic start every week, but because of last week, people might have been down on him. Go ahead, start Ryan Tannehill. Defense gave up a combined 668 yards and 8 touchdowns, to Baker Mayfield and Phillip Rivers the last 2 games. Start Ryan Tannehill today. And with Ryan Tannehill, there are 2 guys that you got to think about as well, and that's A.J. Brown, certified wide receiver 1 now. He's back from injury. He's had 18 receptions for 291 yards and 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games.
Yeah.
So right now, and they have Darius Phillips covering Brown, which is not a good matchup for Phillips, but a great matchup for Brown. So go ahead, start A.J. Brown. Jonnu Smith has had last 2 games, 2 catches and 22 yards. A lot of people are down on him. But the good news is that he's playing against a Bengals defense that actually allows the second most points per reception, PPR points per game to opposing tight ends.
Yep.
So look for both Brown and Smith to have a lot of opportunities, not just on the field, but also in the end zone. And then I want to talk about Tyler Boyd real quick. He's racked up 8 or more targets in the last 5 of his 7 games. We all were talking about Higgins. Yes, Higgins is a really great rookie. He's coming on. He's doing well. Don't forget about Tyler Boyd. He caught 11 of 13 targets for 101 yards against the Browns. The Titans on the other side of the ball, they rank 29th in points per games allowed to opposing wide receivers. So at this point, especially since he's being covered by Chris Jackson, start Tyler Boyd. As far as sitting, I said sit Bernard if you have a better option, just because if there's one area that the Titans are strong in, it is their run defense. If you have an option, otherwise, if you don't have a choice, you can start Bernard. But, I wouldn't look at him to have a great game this week.
Okay. So yeah. I'm going to jump in. We got a couple of questions here we'll get to real quick. As we're talking, put your questions in the comments and we will get to them in between our quick segments. Our first here is, what's the weather in Chicago? So we'll get to that. And would you start Traquan Smith over AJ Green?
No. 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 Everyone wants to write off AJ Green. I actually had him as a borderline sit this week. A borderline start this week. It is not time to write off AJ Green, especially if you're talking about Traquan Smith, who has not been able to put together a few games in a row. I understand the temptation, thinking that as long as Michael Thomas is out, that Traquan will be a perfect replacement. It hasn't come to fruition. I believe, and I'll have to check on it, that Emmanuel Sanders might be back, and if that is, that's definitely going to cut into Traquan's productivity.
I thought Sanders was still out this week.
I'm hearing he's out this week, but it doesn't matter. In this game against that elite Chicago defense and that terrible weather, absolutely not. AJ Green, we all thought he was dead to the water. He's had a little resurgence. Burrow's throwing like crazy. AJ Green over Traquan Smith all day, not even a question.
Green was getting the targets before. It's just now he's catching some of them, which is they seem to be getting a little bit more in sync. Of course, I dropped him after the first 4 weeks of him, going, he'd get 9 targets and have 2 catches for 8 yards. Okay, let's get to the next question here. We have, would you play Wentz over Lamar Jackson today? Of course, Wentz is going against Dallas. And Jackson's going against Pittsburgh. Just off of those 2 comments right there, I would say, yeah, start Wentz over Jackson today. Wentz has been in your top 5, top 6 quarterbacks for several weeks now, and he's getting Goddard back, and he's he loses Jackson, but he really never had him for much of the season at any rate. What has he had? 1 game, 1.5 games with him? So yeah, I go with Wentz over Lamar Jackson today. You guys?
I agree.
I agree. Listen, with regard to the weather in Chicago, I don't know if you all looked it up, but it is going to be cold and windy, as Keith said, with 25 to 30 mile per hour winds and possible gusts of 45 miles per hour. So, if you have those kickers, just be careful out there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, one more before we move on. Sorry, we want to get to these questions. Due to forecasts of sustained winds between 25 to 26 miles per hour, would you pivot from Aaron Rodgers and start Wentz? Here's another Wentz question. Against an especially bad Cowboys defense.
I don't know. I have a hard time right now with the idea of benching Rodgers. I think Rodgers is actually my third ranked quarterback today. I think he's going to have a great game. Minnesota's defense is almost as bad as the Cowboys defense when it comes to giving up. And as far as the wins, remember, this is Aaron Rodgers. This is a guy who plays in Green Bay, who's played in Green Bay for a million years, and he knows how to play the wind. So
he's got arm strength too for it.
Yeah. So I'm starting Aaron Rodgers over Wentz. But
this is a tough one, right? If you have these two quarterbacks, Rodgers is generally, you get him in these games and it'll be snowing and 5 degrees outside and he'll go for 290 and 4 touchdowns. Right. So to really sit Rodgers, especially the year he's having, it's really hard.
I have Rodgers in my start lineup today.
Okay.
The Vikings are giving up 8.47 yards per attempt. That's 30th in the NFL. And when they played against Minnesota earlier in the season, Rodgers had 364 yards and 4 touchdowns. And on top of that, he's coming off of a 4-touchdown game against the Texans. So you could definitely expect some more of that. If you have Aaron Rodgers, I would start him over Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and Jamal Williams is doing a fine job running the ball, but he's not predominantly that running the ball through the tackles guy. They don't have that in Aaron Jones today. So I think Rodgers is weatherproof and he's almost matchup proof unless he's playing Tampa Bay, obviously. But you got to fire up Rodgers here. You don't want to get cute.
Okay, so this is a question not about this week, but Kenneth asks, he picked up Antonio Brown for starting for next week. Was that a wise move? Yeah, I mean, yes. This guy, just looking at his 1-game history with Tom Brady and the fact that Evans or Godwin is essentially one of them is hurt every week.
And Scotty Miller, he's hurt too.
Yeah, it's like a rolling injury there. So yeah, that's a smart move.
Yeah, and Brown has a good history of not being injured. So he might be the one guy that might be healthy all year there.
All right, so let's do this. Keith, let's go to the Colts-Lions game. It's going to be an interesting game today. What are we going to see? What are we looking for in fantasy?
Well, the good thing is we don't have to worry about weather because it's in a dome, so that's kind of nice. So you do have some fantasy relevance here, absolutely. From the Detroit side of the ball, I would not be starting Matthew Stafford. The Colts have a very good defense. Stafford is not really doing as well as anyone thought. His yards are not there. His touchdowns somewhat. I wouldn't fire him up, but you don't get cute about Kenny Galladay because any yards Stafford is getting, they're all going to him. TJ Hawkinson, I'm not in love with him as many people are. I think there's a lot of better options out there. I would not be starting him against the Colts. They have a very good front seven. They cover linebackers well, so I would not be starting him. And if you're looking at Swift and Peterson, I'd be firing up DeAndre Swift. It's an even split, but Swift just looks by far the better running back in that backfield. And he's not losing. What's that?
I was going to say Swift is getting the more important
exactly. And he's getting balls in the red zone. Even though Peterson is their bull rusher, Swift is not getting called out in the red zone. He's getting scores, catches as well. So I'd fire up DeAndre Swift. I would not be playing Adrian Peterson. On Indy's side of the ball, other than Jonathan Taylor, there's no one else I'd be starting on that team other than possibly their defense. They do have a pretty good defense. Fire up Jonathan Taylor. Tom Rathman, the running backs coach, talked about how they are starting to look at really unleashing him. He's been in the 14, 18 per game touches range, which is what you do with a rookie running back. Look at the ones this year. DeAndre Swift had 9, 10, 11 carries through the first 5, 6 games, and they opened him up, gave him 14 carries, and he exploded. So Cam Akers, same thing. They tend to ease rookie running backs into the position, and they are now talking about Taylor, who's averaging 4.5 yards a carry, doing everything right. I would definitely fire up Jonathan Taylor. It's a good start. I'd be sitting Hilton. Pittman's coming off injury. I'm not ready to start him. From a tight end perspective, Trey Burton, a lot of better options out there. Colts side, I've been looking at the defense and just JT.
Sounds great. What about that Raiders-Browns game, Brad?
Well, what about it? This is going to be an interesting one. All right. So we'll go to the weather first, right? 100% rain chance possible with possible snow later in the afternoon, and 25 to 30 mile an hour winds with potential gusts up to 50 miles an hour.
Wow.
So with that being said, start the running backs in this game. You have Jacobs and you have Hunt, right? These guys are going to get a lot of work today. The passes, I would start Darren Waller at the tight end. I think they're going to be short passes. They're going to be little dump offs. They're going to be, little wide receiver screens. I would not start the quarterbacks in this game because of the weather. It's going to be hard to make a pass over 10 to 15 yards. So, I'm sitting Carr. I'm sitting, Nelson Aguilar was a hot pickup this week, right? He's getting more involved in the offense and everything. I think it's going to be a tough day for him today. So I'm starting Jacobs and Waller, starting Hunt. Of course, Higgins has been a hot pickup this week. Give me 1 second. After the OBJ injury. But again, start the running backs, pretty much sit everybody else. Now, defenses might be a good start in this game because it's going to be tough, I think, to move the ball.
All right.
What were you going to say? You were going to say something, 2020?
No, I was just clearing my throat.
Oh, okay.
That was a non-COVID clearing of the throat.
We did have one more question here. Let's see. That's two. Okay, this one maybe not. For the fantasy show, but it says before the 1 o'clock games. This is from Alan. Should I go jogging or roll up a fatty?
I think you do both. I think, and I don't think I want to do both. I think he's going to do both.
Well, yes. Alan's proven that he can do both, which is
right.
Fantastic,
I can't do
by
either.
The way. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Well, you heard that, Alan? We're considering you multi-talented, and we were saying you could do both. So go for it, enjoy, and then watch Tua.
And if he's really talented, he'll FaceTime us while he's doing it.
Yeah. All right. We have another question from Sarah. Risk starting Carson over Jefferson or Woods? Risk starting Carson.
I would not.
Over Jefferson or Woods.
I would not. And
I'm
a Chris Carson owner.
Okay.
And I'm a Chris Carson owner, so I'll answer that. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, Chris Carson has had in-game injuries. One wasn't his fault. It was a really dirty tackle. But I think they're going to be careful. It's a halfway decent matchup going against San Francisco, but they've got, it looks like, I don't know, it's going to come out at 12. I've been watching this very closely, literally refreshing every 15 minutes. It's a crazy backfield. The only true healthy running back in that backfield is DJ Dallas. So if you have, the question was Carson or Jefferson? Who is it?
It says risk starting Carson
or Woods. First of all, I think Keith is right. Go ahead and sit Carson this week. See what's going to happen. As far as Jefferson or Woods, the problem with Woods today is that he's up against the number 4 ranked cornerback in the league, in Xavier Howard, and it's not just a Dolphin fan saying that, but through PFF, he has one of the highest grades for cornerbacks. So Woods is probably going to be shut down today. Actually, look for Cooper Kupp to have the good day today, but I know whoever's doing the Rams is going to talk about that. As far as Jefferson goes, he's not, luckily, he doesn't have to go up against Alexander, and he gets the easier matchup against Josh Jackson, who has a much worse grade as far as a cornerback. So after Jefferson coming off of a really, really good week, torching the Falcons for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns, between those 3, I'm going with Jefferson.
I cannot agree more.
Agreed here. Yep.
All right. So with that, we're going to jump to the Vikings Packers since we're talking about all these games that have these terrible win conditions. This is one of them. We talked about it earlier when we were talking about whether or not to start Aaron Rodgers. The answer is yes. We're going to start Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to go through that again. If you have Aaron Rodgers, you would think that he's an every week start, but because of the win conditions, people might be concerned. In this case, definitely go ahead and start Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to go ahead and throw this up here. Okay. Dalvin Cook, guys, is finally back, right? So the question is, are you going to get a healthy Dalvin Cook? I don't think it matters at this point.
And for how long?
And for how long? You go ahead and you start Dalvin Cook if you have him. The Packers defense, guys, allowing the most points per game to opposing running backs. So you've got to start Dalvin Cook. And I don't think we need to go in depth anymore on that. We talked about Jamal Williams filling in for Aaron Jones. He's definitely being treated as a true workhorse. He's putting in the time. He's getting the carries. He's getting a lot of the snaps. And the weather, like we said, is not going to be great. So expect a lot of Jamal Williams up and down the field. The Vikings, they no longer have Ngakoue. They have a lot of injuries on defense. So I definitely think that in a PPR, Williams could be a top 5 back this week. If you have Jamal Williams, start Jamal Williams. We just talked about Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver for the Vikings. Go ahead and start him. And Kirk Cousins, guys, I'm sorry if you have him, but please put him on your bench today. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, we're going to jump to Brad with the Jets and Chiefs.
I think we're going. By the way, you didn't mention, of course, you're starting Devonte Adams, obviously.
I'm sorry. Yeah, for people that have these automatic starts, we're not going to waste time in mentioning them. Yeah. But yes, you have to start Devonte Adams.
All right, so this is you put it up already. Okay, this is the easiest game of the day. If you have pretty much any Jets player, sit them. If you have a KC player, start them. It's pretty much as simple as that. No weather issues in this game. It's going to be in the 50s with a tiny bit of wind. No big deal. Probably the biggest question mark in this game is CEH and Bell, right? Are they going to try to get Bell involved today? And is that going to take away from Clyde Edwards' carries? Are they going to get up in the game and then kind of just hand the ball to Bell, get him involved? We don't know what's going to happen. We do know they like to score. They like to run plays to see how they're going to work later in the season. So,
Well, here's the question that I have with that game, and I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go for it.
Question. It's yes, CEH and Bell, that's going to be a big issue. How long do they keep Mahomes in if all of a sudden they get a lead?
That is a good question. I mean,
I'm not suggesting you don't start him if you have him. You have to start him.
Right. He may go out at the end of the third quarter with 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. Okay, so you're happy with that. Then you're frustrated that didn't you get 450, with 5 touchdowns.
I don't even think he's getting 350. My point is, a lot of times you see these quarterbacks get the 350 and 400 yards because they're in shootouts. They're in games where they're constantly having to go up and down the field. I don't see that. I see Kansas City scoring quickly. I see him possibly scoring on defense, being up 21-3. And then all of a sudden they just run, possibly take out Mahomes, who might end up the game with 200 yards passing.
I will say this. The Jets kept a relatively healthy, high-flying Buffalo offense, although they're starting to slow down, in check last week. So the Jets defense, it's not great, mostly because their offense is so bad. Kansas City, granted, that is an epic offense, but I wouldn't just count that they're going to be able to roll through this game as easily as you thought. The Jets defense is playing hard.
I would, it was a little bit of mockery with the start everyone and sit everyone. I get that. You're not going to sit anybody if you have a Chiefs player. As far as the Jets, maybe you start Perryman. You're not going to start the quarterback. You're not going to start Darnold. You're not going to start a running back, even though Gore is a questionable, I believe, still right now. I haven't seen anything come out yet on him.
Gore looks like he's not playing. And I will say just one thing. I was going to say at the end, there are so many injuries that are happening right now. And if you have a team, like, for example, I have a team that's got Mostert, Carson, and Austin Eckler on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting guys this week out of desperation, like Gus Edwards, Justin Jackson, and or possibly Travis Honer if Carson doesn't play or whatever it is. And you know something? A guy like LaMichael Perine, again, we're talking start sits, not individual teams, but with Gore being out, and in a game like this, if you're in a half-point PPR or a PPR and you're a little bit desperate, don't overlook LaMichael Perine. He's actually
go ahead and overlook LaMichael Perine against the Kansas City defense.
Okay,
yeah, Kansas City defense
and I'm telling
is a lot
you, he
better
might
than
get
you
5,
realize.
6, 7, 8 catches a game. And in a PPR, if you're desperate, he's a desperation start. I'll say that.
Agreed. If you're desperate, you're gonna go at a lot of players like that, but you got to be really desperate.
Okay, so let's do this, Keith. Why don't we talk about the Rams-Dolphins game? I got the Tua jersey on. We're ready to go with Tua. What's going to happen in the Rams-Dolphins game, and which players are fantasy relevant?
Yeah, this is a really, really hard game to predict because with a new quarterback, granted a talented one, in his first game in the NFL, you have no idea how he's going to be eased in. But let's get into the skinny. Let's start off with what we know. Thank you so much, Sean McVay, for taking a 3-headed backfield and giving us some fantasy clarity. You can fire up Darrell Henderson. It's his show. It's his game. Thank God. And the Dolphins are fair against the run, but I see Darrell Henderson coming nice at a backfield. So fire up Henderson. I'm firing up. Granted, Robert Woods is going to have that hard matchup against Xavier Howard, so he's a sit unless you have to, but Commish is right. Cooper Kupp is definitely the play here. I don't think
he's going up against Nick Needham. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but he's actually the third worst slot cornerback in the league as far as statistics go through PFF. The advantage is definitely with Kupp today.
To Cooper Kupp, and he's an 8 to 10 to 12 target kind of guy anyway. So you're firing up Henderson, you're firing up Cooper Kupp. The question is Jared Goff, who is an outlier of the top 10, if you ask me. You can throw on the Dolphins, but this front seven is getting at quarterbacks. They demolished San Francisco. They knocked Garoppolo out of the game. They demolished New York. If you have better options, I'd start outside of Jared Goff, but the guy can put up numbers against a very good Chicago defense. He went for over 270 and 2 touches, so he can do it. I'd start him if he's the only option you have. And from the Rams, that's all I'm looking at. Possibly the defense as well, because you just don't know how Tua's going to do. Let's talk about the Dolphins. This is a really interesting, or a lot of interesting decisions out of here. Do you start Tua Tagovailoa? And my question is, do you ever start a brand new quarterback in their first game out? I love him. It's going to be exciting. It's a good Rams defense. They're bringing him out for the first time against Sam Darnold. Aaron Donald, one of the best nose tackles in football. I'm sitting Tua until he shows us something. I'm excited about the era. Wouldn't start him for fantasy. Myles Gaskin, I actually would be starting. He has been fantastic, actually. He's getting catches. He's hitting the holes. He's getting the red zone carries. Jordan Howard is MIA on the back of a milk carton somewhere. So I like Gaskin, and I think Tua is going to be doing some checking down. From a wide receiver standpoint, the word on Parker is I believe he is playing.
Yep.
Again, if this was Fitz, I'd say fire him up. With an inexperienced quarterback, we just don't know. I'm hesitant to start him if you have better options. If it's a start, sit, answer, all things being equal, I would sit him. The only one I might consider, I know this is crazy because he's completely disappeared, is Gesicki, which is usually a rookie quarterback's best friend, is a good tight end. But again, if I had to be all things being equal, I really would not be starting Gesicki either. So I'd be looking at Gaskin from the Dolphins, possibly their defense at home, and from the Rams, Henderson, Kupp, and Goff if you don't have better options. So Weather's fine there, by the way.
Here's my thought on Gesicki. I think he is a start today, and I think he becomes the safety valve for Tua. I think we're going to see a lot of Gesicki today. I know that in camp when they were practicing together, they did have a nice connection. Obviously, if you have one of the top 5, you start them at tight end. But if you're contemplating between, Rodgers because Goddard's coming back, or if you're contemplating between some tight ends that who knows what they're going to do on a week-to-week basis, I would take the chance. I think Gesicki has a very high ceiling today.
So let me ask you a question, because interestingly, these are a couple of guys that were on the waiver wire. Would you go Gesicki or Bryant in Cleveland, or Gesicki or Tanyan in Green Bay?
Well, you got to go. I think Tanyan, and I understand what Tanyan's done. He's laid an egg ever since he had that incredible game.
3 touchdown performance.
Then he got hurt, right?
Well, one of them was against Tampa, where the whole team laid an egg, and then you had the next game.
Right. So I like if I had to place it as an order, I would probably say Tanyan, Gesicki, and then Bryant at that point.
Got it. All right. Great.
All right, so we're going to move on, and Brad, if you can put up the banner, we're going to move on to the Steelers-Ravens game. I don't have a lot of expectations today. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. We talk about guys that if you have certain guys, you got to start them every week. So in this case, are you starting Lamar Jackson? We had the question between Wentz and Jackson. If you have Lamar Jackson and you really don't have somebody great with him, you can go ahead and start him. Just don't have big expectations today against a really good Steelers defense. Same thing with Roethlisberger. The Ravens aren't the Ravens of old, but they still have a very good defense. So you can start Roethlisberger if you need to, or if you don't have somebody better, but just don't have great expectations. However, when Roethlisberger does play well, I think you're going to see a lot of Deonte Johnson. He had a really nice welcome back last week after being injured. He had 15 targets, guys, and he caught 9 of them for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's his first game back. So if it wasn't clear after last week, let me make it clear for you. Deonte Johnson is the new wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh and will continue to be. Again, I don't have high expectations because of the defensive matchups, but if you have Deonte Johnson, I think he could be a low-end wide receiver 2 or high-end wide receiver 3 for you this week. Marquis Brown posted a 26% target share, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's 10th in the NFL. And he's first in the NFL in what they call air yard share. So whenever the ball is in the air, 45% of the time it's to him, and that's number 1 in the NFL. So the Ravens, because of that Steeler defense, will probably have to pass more because of Steelers' run defense. So I don't think we're going to have, again, big games from these guys, from the quarterbacks, from the wide receivers. But if you have Marquise Brown, I would expect a good day for Marquise Brown, maybe around a wide receiver 2 this week. Sitting Mark Andrews. I know it sounds crazy. We talk about guys you have to start every week, and Mark Andrews is usually on there, but he's got a tough matchup. Keep talking about that Steelers defense. They've given up the 6th fewest points per game to opposing tight ends. You saw what they did to Jonnu Smith last week. 1 reception, 9 yards. If you have somebody better, I would sit Mark Andrews. If it's between Gesicki and Andrews, I'm probably going to go with Gesicki. But that's me. I would take a chance because of the ceiling on that. All right. So, Brad, I think we've got one more from you.
Yep.
And that would be the Cowboys-Eagles. What's going to happen in NFC least?
So again, there's a little bit of weather in this game. There's about a 90% chance of rain during this game and 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. All right. So that does not bode well for Spicoli. For the Cowboys. Ben DiNucci. Okay.
That was my skull.
All right. I mean, we may see him ordering pizza at halftime at this game. We don't know, right? Now, he is from James Madison University. Who can even tell me the name of that team, the mascot, right? Or the nickname?
No idea.
Okay, it's James Madison Dukes football. Okay, and then he also, I guess, played at Pittsburgh a little bit as well. I mean, this guy's vaulted into this game. The only real player, I just see Philly being able to plan against him, right? Elliott hasn't had a good game in a couple weeks. I know, Commish, you have him in one of the leagues. I've been trying to sell him.
Not a single person wanted him. Nobody. And you know what that means? And I was offering him for a handful of candy corn. What that means is that Zeke's going to go off.
Yeah, probably, right?
Statistics aside, He's going to go off
right.
because everybody kind of thumbed their nose at me that they didn't want Zeke. And I wasn't the guy asking for a lot of stuff for him either. I just got zero.
Yeah. I mean, you have Amari Cooper would probably be the only wide receiver that I say, because that's going to be his outlet there. And he's going to be looking for him as he did last week. That's about it. As far as the Eagles, you have Deshaun Jackson out, you have Zach Ertz out, you have Miles Sanders out, which presents, as we've talked about today, for Scott and Dallas Goedert. Those are the players I have starting: Wentz, Scott, and Goddard. I know Fulgham's had done really well. I'm a little worried about the weather there. I'm looking at them trying to control the clock and kind of trying to run it in short passes, which takes some of those wide receivers out of the game a little bit. So that's why I have the wide receivers as sits in that game.
So what pisses me off is, this is not really advice for anybody, but I actually, I picked up Goddard while he was on IR for the future to use him hopefully if I get to the playoffs. It was a surprise start today for Goddard. The problem is I've also got Hayden Hurst, so I had to start on Thursday night before the word came out that Goddard was actually going to be playing. So, Hurst didn't have a bad game, but I expect Goddard to have a better game than what Hurst did.
He'll be the focal point. Him and Fulgham's doing a great job there. But Goddard with Deshaun Jackson and Zach Ertz healthy was the wide receiving tight end focal point of that offense. He is a beast. Really
All right.
is.
So we have a comment here from Michael saying, with our recommendation, I feel good about starting Andrews. So whichever one of you is talking about Andrews, sounds like he's going with your recommendation today.
I didn't say start him. I said sit him. But it depends. It depends on who else he has.
So maybe he's going on history, like your Zeke.
Yes,
maybe I don't know.
Yes.
Right, there you go.
Right. AKA Topless, who I wish was on the show with us right now. Yes, every time he asks me for a recommendation, I give it to him. The opposite happens. Not great for a fantasy football podcast, to admit, but
at least you can count on it.
Go ahead, Mike, and go ahead and start Andrews today. That being said, Keith, why don't we talk about the Saints-Bears game?
Another interesting weather game. Highs in the 40s, 20-mile-per-hour winds on average, with also 40-mile-per-hour gust. And by the way, a really good Bears defense. That being said, I'm sitting Drew Brees. I actually have him in a league where I picked up Derek Carr, who's been performing admirably well. So I'm sitting Drew Brees for better quarterbacks that are out there right now. I don't like the game. I don't like the matchup. I don't like the weather. As a matter of fact, the only person, with the exception of possibly Jared Cook, because Thomas is out, and it all depends on if Emmanuel Sanders is out, then I would maybe. He's on the cusp, Jared Cook. Obviously, don't have to talk about the fact that you're firing up Alvin Kamara. But other than that, it's possibly Jared Cook and nothing else. In Chicago, Cordarrelle Patterson, I believe, is out. I would be firing up David Montgomery in a game that's probably going to be looking like the old games from the 1940s, where it's just rumbling and grumbling and grinding it out in that weather. So I would be firing up David Montgomery. Robinson looks like he is out of the concussion protocol and will be playing today. It's hard to not play Allen Robinson. He literally gets all the looks on the field there. And listen, in a game where Foles might only pass for 180, 200 yards, the majority of them are going to go to Allen Robinson. You got to start him. I would not be starting Foles. I would be sitting Jimmy Graham. I'm not looking at Anthony Miller either, but feel okay in firing up Robinson, that Chicago defense, as well as the New Orleans defense in that weather. Other than that, not much else to start and look at in that game.
So if you have David Montgomery and you don't have other options, I say, you got to start him. But you don't, like, who really needs his 20 carries for 43 yards? It's like, and they're going against a tough New Orleans defense. They're actually in the top 5 in rush defense.
Here's the problem, Brad. In a game, in a league where you're starting at least 2 running backs in a 10-man league, that's 20 running backs. You're not getting. He is in the top 20.
Hey,
Do you
I would
start-
start-
if you look
I
at-
would
do you start
Muncy
him-
over Lamichael Perrine? I'll tell
I
you
was
that.
gonna. That's what I was gonna
yeah,
ask.
again,
I don't even know if I would do that today. I don't even know if I would do that today with Montgomery.
But you know something? Without Cordero Patterson, how often are you getting a legit 3-down back right now? And that's what you're getting in David Montgomery. No Tariq Cohen, no Cordero Patterson, and a game where there's not going to be a lot of scoring. It's going to be a grind them out. Give me 19 again in a 2-start running back league, even with flexes, he's in the top 20 because there's just so many injured players out there. So I would be starting him.
I think I can name 19 others.
All right, so
Well,
let's
maybe
do this.
that's
Let's
not
move on to
more.
the 49ers Seahawks game, guys. There's some interesting dynamics going on here. First of all, obviously, if you have Russell Wilson, if you have George Kittle, you're starting these guys, okay? But other than that, let's talk about Tyler Lockett real quick. The 49ers have a really tough passing defense, but don't be fooled today because Lockett actually goes up against former Miami Dolphin failure Jamar Taylor, one of the worst slot cornerbacks in the league. In fact, I'll take Nick Needham over Jamar Taylor any day of the week. So, as far as I'm concerned, Tyler Lockett is going to have a field day today. On the other side of the ball, catching it would be Brandon Ayuk. Without Deebo Samuel, it looks like Ayuk again is going to be the number one receiver for the 49ers this week. And considering that no team in the NFL allows more fantasy points to wide receivers in Seattle, you've got to play Brandon Ayuk. If you have him, you probably picked him up. You probably didn't draft him, or if you drafted him, you dropped him and maybe picked him up again.
I tried this week.
Grab him. He's going to be a good play today.
So here's a quick trivia question.
Yeah.
Receiving touchdowns from 2018 to 2020. Could you tell me the top receiver in the NFL for receiving touchdowns?
A wide receiver or any position?
Wide receiver.
Between 2018 and 2020.
Yeah, till now.
Lockett?
That is exactly correct. He has 25 receiving touchdowns, just ahead of Tyreek Hill and Calvin Ridley with 24 and 23.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Well,
Of course, how many did he have last week? he took over last week after having
expect 2 more today from Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
But that being said, with regard to the 49ers, stay away from their running back, stay away from their quarterback. It looks like it'll be Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty, right? Look, who knows what's going to happen? We know that Seattle, that most likely they're going to have a shootout. I don't expect McKinnon or Hasty to have great weeks. Again, if you're desperate, possibly. I know Tevin Coleman actually has a chance to suit up. So just stay away from 49ers running back. Stay away from Garoppolo. It's not worth it. But
didn't they come out this week and say McKinnon had dead legs?
They did. Tired legs.
Yeah, tired legs.
Yeah. So it's actually what I'm reading is that it's going to be a dose of Tevin Coleman and JaMychal Hasty in the lead back role with McKinnon sprinkling in there. But I agree. Maybe Coleman, but other than that, not much to look at in that.
No, I'm not touching any of them. And DK Metcalf, who usually is a must start. He's the king of memes after catching
that rundown
Boo Baker last week on the.
That was awesome.
That was fantastic. But today he's actually he's actually playing against or matched up against Jason Barrett, one of the top cornerbacks according to PFF. I think if you have somebody better to start rather than DK Metcalf, do it. He's not an automatic start this week. If you don't worry too much. You can start Metcalf. I just don't expect him to have a great game because of that matchup. And we're going to finish off our start sit now with Keith. I think we have one more game, which is the Bucs Giants.
That is correct. Just keep refreshing to see if there's any news out on Chris Carson. So the Bucs Giants, interesting game. The New York Giants, sit them, all of them. Not much to look out here. Again, in a massive desperation play, if you have to, Wayne Gallman, but I would not be starting anyone on this team. Sterling Shepard, Tate. None of these guys are start worthy at this point. As far as the Bucs, you have some guys here. I'd be firing up Tom Brady against a pretty beatable New York Giants defense. You got to be starting him. Unfortunately, Chris Godwin is out for Godwin owners, but that opens up some more opportunities for Mike Evans, who I would be firing up. He's playing. Gronk, I'd be firing him up as well. I talked about picking him up a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be him, not Brait. He's got that chemistry there. And then, of course, Rojo, you're firing him up. Fournette's going to come in as the mop up, the third down back. But I think this is a game where Tampa Bay, with that incredible defense, Tom Brady at the helm, disgusts me. I literally throw up in my mouth every time I say his name. They should run out to a pretty big lead, be able to grind that game out, and Rojo should bust out for 100 yards and maybe a touchdown. So I like that. Definitely fire up. I'm picking Tampa Bay as probably the top defense this week in that game. And as far as weather, it's not awful. High of 40s, winds in the 18 to 20 mile per range with 30 mile per hour gust. Tom Brady's used to that in New England, so that's a no biggie for him. So fire up Evans, Gronk, and Rojo without fear. Fire up that defense and sit the entire New York Giants team. They don't even deserve to be on the field. Sorry, New York.
So I just wanted to say I did make one little quick mistake earlier. I said that potentially Brashard Perryman, he's ruled out today. I missed that, but he is out. So now you have Crowder and Perryman out. Which
it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Right. So it's Barrios and Mims, and you're not starting either.
Right.
No. And some of the other more relevant people that are going to be out, we already talked about some of them. Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, John Ross, all are going to be out this week. Mark Ingram is going to be out. What I did find interesting, though, and I think, and I might be wrong, but for the first time, and this has nothing to do with fantasy, but for the first time this week, I think Malcolm Perry with the Miami Dolphins, the seventh round draft pick out of Navy, actually is active this week.
Well, he is exciting.
And Lynn Bowden is not active.
This
play.
Yeah.
Who's inactive?
Inactive is Lynn Bowden, who they had picked up from Kentucky, who had been active for the past few weeks. He's similar to Perry in that role, quarterback / wide receiver. And the Chandler Cox, the fullback, is also, which is concerning for Gaskin owners on the goal line. Jordan Howard is also out. He's inactive this week. So I don't know. It's going to be very. It's going to be
an exciting 1 o'clock game. Yes, very much. To it. Yeah.
So all of that being said, I'm getting excited. I'm going to get the air fryer getting ready to go with some popcorn chicken. So what do you guys? Anything else before we end the day?
Stay tuned for at 12 o'clock. There's a lot of news coming out. There's some game time decisions, so watch for those GTDs at noon for your desperation plays that you have out there. Other than that, it's another Sunday with exciting football. Let's enjoy, and happy day after Halloween.
Yeah, happy November, and looking forward to week 8. This is week 8. This is about halfway through the season. We made it somehow, right?
Yep.
Exciting
against all odds.
All right, guys. Take care.